I have come with a very, very open agenda because I did not get to see your profiles, what you have been doing, or anything about you. So I wanted to keep it very, very flexible. So it's a huge risk on my part, and I'm sincerely hoping that it pays off well. All right. The topic that we are going to discuss today, functional programming in JavaScript, is not in any academic sense of functional programming. When you look at the adoption of functional programming as such, as a technique in programming languages, there are several levels. There are some languages that are pure functional, right? You cannot even deviate from the functional aspects that are there in that particular language. There are some languages where they adopt some aspects of functional programming as such, right? Where do you think JavaScript fits in these two languages? Okay, let me ask you this question. What are the languages that are purely functional? Anyone? Haskell, Lisp, right? Good, very good. So these are all the languages that are purely functional in academic sense. The languages that are not so functional are primarily not really functional languages, but they also have a glimpse of functional aspects available in them. Can you name some of the languages?
Scala.
JavaScript, fantastic. Other than that? Scala, other than that? But Python, Ruby. If you think about it, almost all languages have some or the other form of functional aspects included in them these days. You agree with me? Right? I saw the adoption of a functional aspects in mainstream programming language in 2008, when in .NET Microsoft introduced the concept of delegates and lambda expressions, wherein we were able to deal with functions rather than in terms of objects. We can get down to functions rather than in terms of objects, right? So I think that's where it started, and even before that, Ruby had the concept of blocks, wherein you can go for anonymous functions, pass around state and logic in terms of anonymous functions. So now you have languages in these two extremes, and as you well know, JavaScript is a language that has the flavors of both objects and as well as functions are embedded in them. So what I have come to realize, right, the more I use JavaScript, the more I come to realize that there are a lot of things that you can do with simple functions rather than going about doing it with the help of objects. I'm not meaning to say that objects are useless. They have their own place. But a lot of things that we tend to adopt, right, objects for, can be very easily achieved with the help of functions. And how is it possible? Or what characteristics that the language has that makes this possible? Or what makes JavaScript a functional language? Or in other words, let me make this question a lot more simple. What makes a functional language different from a procedural language? What makes a functional language different from a procedural language? Am I allowed to get down? Callbacks, okay. Higher order functions, fantastic. I'm sorry? Stateless. Are you sure? Immutability, okay. And then? Yes, sir. Closures. Okay, so that's the answer to your question. What does closure talk about? States. Yes or no? Right? Okay, and then anything else? Functions are first class. Fantastic, right? Functions are first class citizens. Functions are first class citizens. Okay, very good. And why are functions, or in what way functions are not first class citizens in procedural languages? Let's take COBOL, right? COBOL is also made of procedures. Yes or no?
No idea.
Don't make me feel old. Right. My exposure to COBOL is strictly academic. It was in my college days. Right. So COBOL was one of the foremost procedural language. So you can, your whole application is made in terms of procedures, basically functions. Your whole application is made in terms of procedures. How is that different from functional language? You have functions there, you have functions here. So how is it different from functional languages? Functions can be passed as arguments. Functions can be passed as arguments. Now, when I thought hard about it, I realized something. What is it? I can treat functions the same way I can treat an object in every aspect. Right? I can treat a function the same way I can treat an object. Right? I'm not going to get into partial functions, currying, etc. I'll leave it to you to figure it out, those things. But our focus will be primarily today on what are the ways in which I can treat functions in place of objects, or how can I say functions can be treated exactly like objects, right? In no academic sense it makes sense what I am going to do now, but it is perfectly possible in the case of JavaScript, right? What I will do is I'll do side by side what you can do with objects, and we will evaluate whether those same things can be possible with the help of functions, right? None of this is functional, but I am just trying to experiment the features, the language, how it is flexible to adopt functions as my primary construct rather than objects. So let's straight away jump in. I've been asked to record this, so let me. Excellent. Now, my editor of choice today is going to be I said my editor of choice is going to be Chrome Console. Right? I am pretty happy with Chrome Console as an editor. Let me choose Control-Shift-J. Am I getting the same thing? I am hoping not. Good. Fantastic. I will. Give me a second. So that I don't get to see a lot of other stuff. There you go. Better? Are we good? Excellent. Now, on one side, we are going to have objects. We are going to experiment what is possible with objects, what is not possible with objects. On the other side, we are going to validate our argument as to, can I use objects in place of functions? To what extent I can go for, right? Let's start with one simple aspect. What are the possible ways I can create an object? I can create an object as an object literal. I can create an object using object.create, right? New, right? I can do a new of object. So I can do all these things. There are several ways by which I can. Thank you, sir. You need that? Okay. There are several ways by which we can create objects. Let's start with this. So I can create an object using an object literal. So now when I do a type of O, it tells me that it is an object. Yes or no? Now, can I do the same thing with a function? Of course I can. Now, what is this called as? The way I have used it, it is called a function expression, a function literal. Why? Because the function as the term appears as a part of an expression. You agree with me? Is that clear? It appears as a part of an expression, so I can call it as a function literal. Now the way you create an object using an object literal, I can create a function using a function literal. Good. Let's go about creating an object using the object constructor function. So let's do this. I'll say where O equal to new object, right? I'll pass nothing. Now, what is type of O? Can I do that with functions? How? No. Function uppercase. What is type of F? It's a function. Look at what is F. Is it clear? So in JavaScript you have a constructor function called function. Right? You have a constructor function called function using which you can create a new function. Now you may ask, big deal. What can I do with this? Right? What can I do with this? There are some very interesting application of this. For example, first let us see how this is okay, but is there anything concrete I can get out of this? Is there anything meaningful I can get out of this? Yes. How? The way this works is, when you create a function using constructor function, you can pass the arguments, and the last argument will become the body of the function. The last argument will become the body of the function, and the remaining arguments will become the actual arguments to the function. So for example, I can say A, B, and then return A plus B. Now, you know what I can do? I can call f of 10, 20, 10, 30, it will give me 40. How? Because if you look at f is an anonymous function which takes A and B as the body and returns A plus B. The return A plus B has become a body of the. Are you with me? Yes. Right. Am I talking things that you all know? Right? Now in what context I can use this? In what context I can use this? John Resig uses this fantastically in jQuery. Right? In jQuery, for AJAX functions, you need to parse the incoming string and return it. Yes or no? Now, we all know that eval is evil. Right? Eval is evil. What is the other choice? You have a JSON string and you need to parse it into a JavaScript object. If I should not do eval, what should I do? Pass it to a? Exactly, right? You can pass it to a function as an argument and just return it. And just return it. Do you understand? Right? So this is the technique that jQuery uses. Allow me to disconnect the sharing for a second so that I can locate my jQuery script where I can find jQuery. Right? jQuery, where is you will find that. Let me not waste time now. Which line number or when we take a break. You can use a function as I can do it something like this. JSON string is this. I'll say so it has to be a single quote. Is 100 is. Now in case browser is not supporting Windows, we all know that recent browser. So eval, the choice is, or you can do Windows is assuming, right, your browser where you don't. The other choice that you have is JSON2.js. Very simply, what you can do is you can take a function. Take a function. You can do this. Sorry. New string that takes an argument return plus. So this will be. Sorry, return string. That is it. This will be. Now this. So you can say take this. You can invoke it with str. Okay. So this returns me the. No, sorry. This is, I can, you know what? I can just take this one where f equal to with the returns the have to return. Just give me a second. Right? So this is what I can do. So our JSON string right? So what is our JSON string? This is a plain simple string. And now what you can do is I can take this, right? If you invoke now, it will give me an object. So basically what you have done is you have converted the string into the method of the body of a function. You have converted a string into the body of a function, of a new function. Are you with me? So the return, the string becomes the body of the function. So if you look at what is f, right? You see that the string has become an expression. Are you following? Is that clear? Now, if you look at jQuery code, I'll tell you later after the break, right? So if you look at jQuery code, the jQuery uses this technique, but before that it does some sanitization in terms of, the incoming data should not have any malicious code as a part of the string. So it does some sanitization, but after doing that, all it does is it creates a new function in this process by which your string becomes a part of the function body. Invoke it, you get the object. You get the complete JSON object, right? So this is the application of the new function, constructor function. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Right? So you can create an object using an object literal, the same way we are able to create a function using a function literal. We are able to, yes sir.
How is it safer than eval?
How is it safer than eval? No, it's not safer as such. This is another way by which you can do it.
By the way, eval works in the global context.
Correct.
And the function percentage which you are reverting to call that function as the function. That is why it is taken for granted. But you get the
And
how this is different than you can do the same thing with set amount and interval as well. Pass the function body as a set amount.
why would I use a set timeout here?
If you have already screwed up operation, you don't want to say.
Right. So that's for a different purpose, right? So basically I am delaying this process, right? You can do that. You can do that, right? The other reason, the other answer to your question is, here your return statement converts it as an object literal, yes or no? Right? What if you have an alert there? Right? So that is the idea, right? So I just wanted to show you what is the use of creating one application of dynamically creating a function using the function constructor function, right? One application of dynamically creating a function using the function constructor function. Fantastic. Okay, so creation is fine. I am able to create a function. Yes, sir.
Say you have a nested JSON, say and you have a namespace within it.
It doesn't matter. Why? Because see, all you do is you just take a string and make it as a valid expression by making it as a body of the function. So if the string is valid JSON in any nested format, that will be automatically evaluated to the respective object. If it is an array, it will convert to an array. If it is an object, it will convert to an object. If it is object or array, that combination.
It's a key and the value is a
It's a key and the value is a?
namespace that gets invalid to another object.
Is that a valid JSON?
No, it's a JSON configuration. You have a key and the value is a namespace.
Okay.
You are evaluating to get the object. Now I want to avoid the eval. How would you do that?
No.
The value will be a namespace.
Value will be a namespace. Okay, just the namespace. Okay. What do you mean by namespace here?
Say x dot y dot z.
Okay, fine. So what does x dot y dot c refers to?
If you evaluate it to be an object again.
Okay.
Now I don't want to eval. I use a new function.
Correct. So what it will do, it will become return x dot, return an object containing a key having a value x dot y dot z. Yes. Okay. So what is the problem?
But that should get evaluated to the object as well.
It will. When you return an object, it will get evaluated. See, as long as it gets converted, okay, so your question is, will it get evaluated to an expression? Will expressions be evaluated? Is that your question? That's it, right? So if you want the JSON string, let us take the JSON string. So if you take this JSON string, and instead of giving the 100, you want to say 10 plus 20. Will this be evaluated? Is that your question? Have I simplified what you are trying to say here? Right? Now, do this and invoke f. You get an object with ID 30. So how does it matter? As long as the namespace is resolvable, right? The scope is available, it will do it. That doesn't matter. Right? Okay. So creation, good. So we were able to create the object the same way we were able to create the function. We were able to create the function the same way we were able to create the object. Excellent. Now, what are the other characteristics of an object? Let's look at this. Can I say o.id equal to 100? Of course, yes. Now let us say where f equal to a function, a dummy function, plain simple function, anonymous function. Can I say f dot id equal to 100? Right? I can very well say f dot id equal to 100. Functions can have state associated to them. The way you have objects state associated to them, you can very well have functions state associated to them. If functions can have state, can functions have methods? Of course you can. So if o.display, so let me simply say o.display equal to a function, and you can say console.log this dot id. Let's do this, and I can say o.display. You can create it. Now I can also say f.display is equal to a function, and do a console.log this dot id. Now do f.display. Of course it is possible. Now you can have state associated to an object. You can have function methods, behaviors associated to an object. Similarly, you can have state associated to a function and behavior associated to a function. Are you with me? Right? Okay, very good. What else I can do? Assuming that I have a function fn that takes an argument x. Right? Let me rewrite this a little bit. I'll do a console.log what is x. Can I invoke fn by passing the object o? We all know that it is possible. Can I invoke fn by passing f? Can I invoke fn by passing f? Of course you can. Right? So you can pass a function as an argument to another function, the way you can pass an object as an argument to a function. Now, the same way, if I can return an object as a return value from a function, can I return a function as a return value? You can very well do it. Now, what makes the difference between functions and objects? A function can be executed, an object cannot be executed. What makes you think that it will be different in terms of functions? It will be the same. It will be the same. Yes, sir.
And the value is k dot b. Okay? K is another object which has a key called b, whose value is 10. Now if I do a new function d for j, it throws an error. But it should be A.B. That is A. A should have.
You single-handedly woke up everyone, man. No, I couldn't understand it. Probably I'll have a look at the code. I couldn't visualize what you are saying. Huh? So I'll have a look at the code. That looks like an interesting challenge. But what makes it not possible? Did you try this? Well, it's not resolving at runtime, is it?
Because you won't get the
Access. You're talking about the scope. That's what I said. Right? There was a condition supply. The condition was, as long as the scope allows it to, you can do it. Right? So what you can do is, this is one of the things that I used to do whenever whenever the scope would not allow me to do it is, pass the scope as the argument. So it is available? Exactly. Right? So that is something that you need to explicitly do. Right? We'll look at it. We'll discuss about it. Okay? Now, fine. So functions as objects. We are able to treat functions in every way, the way we are able to manipulate objects, right? The way we are able to manipulate objects. One of the things that can be done by functions but cannot be done directly using objects is maintaining private state. Right? Maintaining private state. So when I say maintaining private state, when you create an object, when you have members in the object, all the members are public by default. You agree with me? Right? Is there any way by which I can make something private? The only way by which you can make something private is with the help of functions. Right? Is with the help of functions. How? How? No, that is too private. I want it to be extended. I want the lifetime of that container to be extended. So, okay. So, what I am coming to is closure. Right? So, what I am coming to is basically closures. So, what closures allows you to do? A closure allows you to extend the lifetime of an object or a function, any entity for that matter, beyond the container in which it has been created, right? Beyond the container in which it has been created. Okay. No closures. Raise your hand. Who is not aware of closures? Okay. There are a lot of things that can be done only with closures. Can I take a slight deviation for a couple of minutes so that I can make them understand closures and we'll get back? Is it okay? Others? Okay. Now, basically, a closure is a way by which you create private state. Right? A closure is a way by which you can create private state. Let's do this. I mean, I like to explain it with an example. Let us assume that we have a simple HTML page where I have a button, just a button. And I want to track the number of times the button is clicked. Very basic example, right? A very simple HTML page wherein you have a button and I want to track the number of times the button is clicked. So let's do that. So I'll name it as click tracker. Okay. I need a button that says button track and a div where I want to display a message. Let us do this. Now, right, get the element by ID of button track and we will do an add event listener of click and say on button track click. Let us write simple on button track click. And most likely we would need a variable, so I'll say where count equal to 0. When the button is clicked, I'll simply say plus count and then document dot get element by ID of div message dot inner HTML is equal to count. That's it, right? A very simple application. Now let's open it in the browser. Let's open it in the browser. Now, okay, I did not have the value, so let me give the value. Track. So I find this a simple example to explain closures. So now we have a button, and as and when I click, I expect the value to be shown. But the only challenge is the complete application is open for hacking. Why? I can come here and set it to 10,000. Now click track. You'll automatically find that it takes 10,000. What is the other thing? I can also execute the function. I can keep incrementing the value without actually clicking. Why? Because everything is defined in the function script block. So what I do, one simple trick that I always follow is anytime you want to hide something, wrap it inside a function. Right? Anytime you want to hide something, wrap it inside a function. Later worry about whether it is available after that or not, but simply wrap it inside a function. So let me create a simple function and put it here, and I'll say my app. Save this, go back, reload this. Now you have almost secured your application. Let's come here. It says it is undefined. On button track click, it is not available, right? So pretty much we were able to secure our application by wrapping the whole code in a function and invoking the function. Yes or no? Now you may ask, hey, my app is still accessible. Right? My app is still accessible. So what can I do? IAFE is a solution, right? Immediately invoking function expression. So basically you can wrap this and immediately invoke it. Now the idea behind immediately invoking function expression is a function object is created, invoked, and then immediately destroyed. The function won't be there after it is invoked, right? Say for example, if I take a function add and take x and y and say return x plus y, right? You invoke it with 10, 20, you will get 30, but will the add function be available after that? No. Are you with me? Right? Now, mostly you will make this function as an anonymous function. The reason is you want to make your intent clear, saying that, hey, this is being invoked immediately and destroyed immediately, so you won't have this function after that, right? So how do you reveal that? You reveal that by not naming that function, right? So we follow that technique, and then we convert this into an IAFE. And now let me reload the application. Click this. Everything works just fine, right? So everything works just fine. On button track click, nothing is visible, and obviously you don't even have my app. Are you with me? Right? Okay. So for those people who are new to closures, what happens to a variable in a function after the function is executed? You have a function, you have a variable in the function, it has some value. After you execute the function, what happens to the variable typically? Garbage collected, right? Now, what do we have in line number 7? A function. What do we have in line number 9? Variable. What do we have in line number 17? You are invoking the function, yes or no? Right? The function is invoked. So you have a function, you have a variable with a value, and you are invoking the function. What should effectively happen to the count variable? What are we witnessing actually? Is my question clear? Right? So in general, if you have a function, you have a variable, you invoke the function, the variable is destroyed. But here you have a function, you have a variable at line number 9, you invoke the function at line number 17. So the count variable should effectively be destroyed, but what we are witnessing is that it is not getting destroyed. So what's happening? So what is actually exactly, right? Basically what you have done is inadvertently you have created what you call as a closure. Inadvertently you have created what you call as a closure. Are you with me? How do you create a closure? You create a closure typically with two functions and a variable sandwiched between those functions. I am going to draw a very, very crude so just to explain closures. So let's take this. Now let's assume that this is one function. Is that clear? So let's name this as an outer function. Are you with me? Now let me also create an inner function. So typically a closure is created, okay, even before that. You have an outer function and then you have a variable in the outer function. You have a variable in the outer function and you have an inner function, right? This is step number 3. This is what you do for closures. So you create an inner function. So this is, let's name it as an inner function, right? And then this is, the next two steps are very important. You refer the variable in the outer function in the inner function. Make sense? You use the variable in the outer function in the inner function. This is step number 4. Step number 5 is you extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function. You extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function. When you do that, what you are actually doing is you are creating a closure on this variable. Is that clear? Because the inner function has to live beyond the outer function, it drags the variable along with it. It drags the variable along with it. Are you with me? Right. Now let us compare this.
If there are variables that are unreferenced inside the inner function,
they will be yes. Right? I don't know what is the implementation, but I am suspecting that internally it is the ref counts that are being used to check. I don't know. I'm not too sure about it. There is a possibility. So if you are not handling closures properly, right, it may lead to memory leaks. Yes. I'm sorry? How that can be handled? You just need to be you need to make sure that you have the scope properly maintained. That's all. I'm sorry? There are tools. You can use those tools to detect them, right? Okay. So in our case, if I have to compare this step by step, you will find that we have an outer function here. Step number 1, we have a variable declaring the outer function. Step number 2, we have an inner function. Step number 3, and the variable in the outer function is referred in the inner function. Step number 4, isn't it? Right? How are we achieving step number 5 here? Extend the lifetime of the inner function beyond the lifetime of the outer function by this line number 11. So in line number 11, what have we done? We have said, hey, whenever the button is click that particular function. Yes or no? So the on button track click has to live even after the complete function is executed. And because that is going to live, the count variable also will live along with it. Are you with me? So effectively what you have done is,
The thing is, if say I have another count, say another count as a variable, which is not referenced in one of the functions that is added to the,
it will be destroyed.
So will it be destroyed?
Destroyed. It will be destroyed.
But then the function is the scope where we are storing the thing, right?
See, if you have a function if you have a variable at line number 8 and not referenced anywhere, then that variable will be destroyed right after the function is executed. See, everything, it's your normal function. Everything is your regular function, but the only thing is the line number line. So in line number 9, by assigning the function as a click event handler to the button, you have made the function live longer than the outer function, and thereby you have created a closure on the count variable. I can show you, I mean, today's browsers can show you what are all the closures that you actually create. Let us take this guy, right? So sources, open the file and locate the code, locate the button track click. For now, let me just reduce the size a little bit. I'll come back to this. Set a breakpoint here, right? On the on button track click, I have set a breakpoint. Now, right? Now, when you click the button, you see the function is called. We have set a breakpoint. The function execution is suspended at this particular point. Now you see, these are all the local variables. If you look at closure, you'll find that it treats the count variable as a closure. It treats the count variable as a closure. Are you with me? Right? Okay. So, I'm sorry? Next line. Yes, because it has to have a reference to its own function, right? Okay. So, now, this is how you create a closure. And closure is what allows you to have any private state in your application. If at all you are doing anything complex in JavaScript, it is not possible without the help of closures. If at all you want to maintain anything private, it is possible only with the help of closures. Only with the help of closures, right? So, a function can have two states. An object can have only one state, a public state, whereas a function can have two states. One is the public members that you attach. Those are all your public state. And in the form of closures, it can maintain private state as well, right? In the form of closures, it can maintain private state as well. Are you with me? Is that clear? Right? This is supposed to be a workshop, isn't it? So you are expected to code, isn't it? Yes or no? Right, let us solve a problem. This is the problem. I want you to create a function. Create a function to detect if the given number is a prime number or not. Right? Create a function to detect if the given number is a prime number or not. No HTML, no button click, no button, no event handlers, nothing. Code it in the editor, paste it in console and execute it. Are you with me? Is that clear? Right? Now, this is child's play. The catch is here. In order to check whether the number is a prime number or not, you run an algorithm, right? From 2 to n by 2 or square root of n, whatever it is, right? You keep executing the algorithm. This function has to be written in such a way that the algorithm has to be executed for one number only once. Is that clear? The algorithm has to be executed for a number only once. So you call the function, say with 100. You are free to run the algorithm and arrive at whether it is true or false. But once you arrive at true or false, right? The next time you invoke the same function with 100, you should return true or false without executing the algorithm. Are you with me? Basically, your function has to remember its results. Is that clear? Your function has to remember its results. And remember, I should not be able to fiddle with the result from the outside, right? I should not go and change. By default, the actual result of 100, is it prime number or not? No, false. After I do this, I should not go and say, modify the function and say, modify the variable or whatever it is. Make the function to return true. Is that clear? Right? So, the point is, implement caching infrastructure in your function in such a way that it can remember the result, number one. Number two, the caching infrastructure should be private. It should not be accessible from the outside. Are you with me? Do you understand? Right? Okay. Now, what is the solution for maintaining something private? That is it. Now do it. You have 10 minutes time. Raise your hand if you need any assistance. Righto. So let me do my version. Obviously, it's very difficult to come and look at each one of your code and say what is the problem there. Let me just do my version and then compare it with yours and tell me if there is what is it? Right? It's going to be very simple. This is going to be my cache. I'm using an object as a cache because I need a hash, and then I'll write a simple utility function. Is prime takes n, and this is going to return for where I equal to 2, I less than. I'm taking a very not so efficient algorithm, and I plus plus. If n mod I is equal to 0, return false. Otherwise, return true. Now I'll make it as n equal to return true. Okay, so this is my function. Now, right, this is my is prime function. Now let me write another function, and what this function will do is, this function will get the value, right? So this function this is check prime, take the number, and then it will check the cache. If type of cache of n is equal to undefined, right? If it is not equal to undefined, just for the sake of understanding, I'll say from cache and return cache of n. Otherwise, right, I will assume that it is okay. So otherwise, I'll simply say cache of n is equal to is prime of n, and then console.log just processed, and then return cache of n. Make sense? Now, if I leave with this as it is, everything will be public. But what I want to do, what are the things that I want to hide and what are the things that I want to reveal, right? I want this to be hidden. But I want others to gain access to this, right? So wrap the whole stuff inside another function. Get prime finder, and we will return the check prime function. That's it. So now let's go here, go to console, clear this, paste it. Now where prime finder is equal to get prime finder. Prime finder is equal to get prime finder. Now, if you look at it, this will give me access to the inner function, and because of closure, I will still have access to the cache variable. Now, let us check prime finder of 100. So it will say just processed, the result is false. Call it once again. Where is it coming from? From the cache. So 1000 just processed, call it again, call it any number of times. It will keep coming only from the cache. So as long as this function lives, as long as this function lives, the cache object will live. Is that clear? So the moment this scope is gone, the cache scope will also be gone. Now the only person or the only entity that can access the cache object here is the prime function, this function. No one else can access it. Are you with me? Yes, questions?
It was related to the same. Can I just say prime finder dot cache?
No, prime finder dot is public. Okay, you are asking here, is it possible for me to say instead of cache you want to use the function itself as a reference? Is that what you mean to say?
No, not really. Go back to the console. Go back to the console. You are using here. Can I access the rest of the things?
No,
Dot cache.
it will not. Right? You are actually using some of the premises of functional programming here. Right? I have not explicitly revealed it, but you are using some of the premises of functional programming. What? The last two we discussed, when we discussed about objects and functions, the last two, what was it? A function can be passed as an argument to another function. A function can be returned as a return value from another function. Yes or no? When a function takes a function as an argument or returns a function as a return value, those are called as higher order functions. Right? Those are called as higher order functions. Now, a closure is typically created by employing a higher order function. Why? Unless you return a function, right? I mean, either you can return a function or you can return an object that has a reference to a function, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, a function has to be returned. Majority of the time, you will find that returning a function is the simplest thing that you can do to create a closure. And because the program, the language allows you to return a function, you are able to create closures. You are able to create closures. Are you with me? Any questions? No. Only through that function. Only from inside that function. Any questions? Right? So we just saw returning a function as a return value. Returning a function as a return value. And one of the most useful scenario you return a function is to create a closure. And why closures are important? Because that's the only way by which you can create private state. That is the only way by which you can create private state. Any questions? Shall we move on? Already? Okay, this will be the only break. Is it okay? 3:30 we want to break? Yeah, we'll break at 3:30. Okay? Alright. So passing a function, returning a function as a return value. Fantastic, we saw that. Good. Now, what scenarios I use a function as an argument apart from callbacks and events? One of the very common scenario where you find functions being used is functions being passed as arguments is what? Right? Callbacks. What are the other applications that you have seen functions being passed as arguments? What I have seen is delegation. Anytime I want to delegate some of my responsibility, right? I want to coordinate with someone else in future who will come in future. I open it up by making him pass a function so that I can utilize his services, right, when I perform my job, right? Let us take a very, very simple example, and it's callback. See, the context, I mean, what to say, how do I put it? Yeah, there's something else in my mind, I'm unable to put it in words. I'll tell you, right? One of the more useful places where I have seen functions, or you can simplify your code, to be more specific, right? You can simplify your code is effectively using functions as arguments. Most design patterns, object-oriented design patterns, right? Most design patterns can be greatly simplified when you try to exploit the functional aspect of the language, right? When you try to exploit the functional aspect of the language. I'm going to demonstrate one simple aspect. Maybe you can take it as an exercise and see what are all the design patterns that I can simplify in JavaScript, right, without going through the same approach that the gang of four typically takes. They take that approach because of the various constraints that the object-oriented languages that put forth, right? What are they? Strongly typed, static. So I have to do a lot of things in order to make the runtime aware of what type of object my application is dealing with. And because JavaScript is not a strongly typed language, and because it is it's a loosely typed, in other words, because it's a loosely typed language, it is a dynamic language. A lot of things that you take an elaborate measure to achieve in object-oriented languages and design patterns can be very easily achieved in the case of with the help of functions, right? So let me show you a simple example. Most of you must be aware of it, but nevertheless, let us just give it a shot. Now, let's assume that we have a list of products, right? Let's assume that we have a list of products. So, products is equal to, let me create a quick array, give me a second. Yeah, sure, sir. Better? Let me also introduce. All right. Now, some random values. I'll check in the code, maybe you can take it up later for right. So categories are plain simple, right? Okay, so I have a plain simple array of products, right? Okay, now, so sorry, what happened? All right, so I just want to see what all the products. So console.table of products will give me the list of products, right? So I usually take a HTML page to display it, but after realizing that console itself can display it in a beautiful table, I stopped doing that. So now I have the complete list of objects displayed here. Now, all I want to do is, I want to write a plain simple sort function that will sort the list of products, right? So let me follow bubble sort. Let me follow bubble sort. Now, where I equal to 0, I less than list.length minus 1, I plus plus, for where j equal to I plus 1, j less than list.length and j plus plus. Now, where product 1 equal to list of I, comma, product 2 equal to list of j. Let us check this. So if product 1 dot id is greater than product 2 dot id, this is going to be a child's play for you guys. Let me just say where temp is equal to product 1 and list of I is equal to list of j and list of j is equal to temp. Now once I finish this, typically your right, I pass sort of products, you'll find that when I do the console dot table of products, you'll find that it is sorted by ID 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 and 9, whereas the initial sequence is 4, 7, 3, 9, 5 and 2, right? Are you with me? Now what I want to do is, if it were an object-oriented language, how would you define different sorting capabilities? I want to sort it by cost, I want to sort it by units, I want to sort it by category, right? I can't sort it by anything, isn't it? How will I generalize this function in such a way that I can sort it by anything? Right? So one simplest way by which you can do that is just take the attribute name, yes or no? And because of the hashbag nature of the object, now what I can do is I can sort it by any attribute. So let us take this, go back, come on, why is it going again and again and again? Now let us do sort of products, comma, units, console.table of products, you'll find that it is sorted by units 20, 30, 40, 60, 70, 80. Let's also do sort of products, comma, costs. Now do a console.table of products, you'll find that it is sorted by cost. You see here 20, 30, 50, 70, 80 and 90. Are you with me? Do you understand? Now what I want to do is this. I want to apply a discount. I want to apply a discount on the products and then sort them based on the discount. And the discount is based on the category. For category 1, the discount will be 10%, and for category 2, the discount will be 20%. Right? So basically, the comparison is not going to happen based on what values the object has directly. I want to do some processing, and then the result of the processing has to be compared, right? The result of the processing has to be compared. Are you with me? Right? Now, in object-oriented languages, you have the over design pattern. Which pattern can I employ here? Fantastic, right? I'll go for a strategy pattern. So, what strategy? What will I externalize? No, strategy to compare it, exactly, right? So if you look at what, if I want to sort by different attributes, or if I want to sort by different logic, right? Everything will remain the same except the way I compare. Right? The iteration logic will remain the same, the swapping logic will remain the same, everything will remain the same except the comparison. Yes or no? So keep what is common, move out what is varying. Right? Simple thumb rule. Keep what is common and move out what is varying. So what will vary? Only this expression will vary. Instead of comparing by ID, I will compare it by cost. Instead of comparing by cost, I will compare it by some other logic. Right? So what I can do, how can I externalize this part? So I say, boss, I will do the sorting, but I don't know how to compare them. Can you help me? Right? So now the user will say, okay, so in what way you want my assistance? I'll say, I'll take two products, give it to you. You compare them and tell me which one is smaller, which one is larger, whether they are, right? So what is the result of the comparison? You just tell me, I will do it. Now to implement this in object-oriented languages, To implement this idea in object-oriented languages, what I have to do? I have to go for an abstract class, either an abstract class or an interface. iComparer in .NET, in C#, right? It is iComparer or iComparer of T, right? For a particular type, iComparer of T, and then you need to have concrete classes. Compare by ID, one class, implementing iComparer. Compare by cost, implementing iComparer. And then, depending on the situation, you would create an instance of either compare by ID or compare by cost and pass it to the sort method. Yes or no? If you think about what you are actually doing, right? If you take all these things and if you think about what you are actually doing, you are passing one function. Right? You are passing just one function. And just for passing one function, I create one abstraction and then concrete classes and create an implementation of those concrete classes, I mean instances of those concrete classes, and then pass them. Why? Point number one, I cannot pass functions. The least package that I can create in object-oriented languages to pass around state and behavior is what? Objects. Objects is the least possible way, atomic way by which I can package something so that I can send from one place to another place. So in order to send that one behavior, I have to go for an object, point number one. Point number two, because of the strongly typed nature of the language and the runtime, right? The runtime wants to know which object you are passing. It just cannot take any object. So it needs to be aware of which object you are passing. So to make the runtime say, don't worry boss, I am passing an object that you know already. Right? At least some part of it you know. So what do? You create an interface, you create an abstraction. And through the abstraction, you make the sort method aware of which type of object that you intend to pass in future. Right? So this elaborate way of achieving things can be simply achieved with just by passing one function. You agree with me? Right? Now, the reason why I chose this topic is for people who are relatively new to JavaScript or who have not done any complex work in JavaScript, right? My experience in the initial days was very, very frustration. Anytime I try to work in JavaScript for a longer time beyond validation, anytime I try to achieve something more than validation in JavaScript, there will invariably come a point wherein I bang the table and curse the language. Right? Bang the table and curse the language. Why? Because it took some time for me to realize that I was trying to use JavaScript as Java. Trying to use JavaScript as C#. Right? Till the time I was able to really appreciate what the language offers. Right? Get out of C#. Leave the language. Forget what you learned in object-oriented languages and learn this language in all its glory, right? When you do that, you will find it is extremely liberating when compared to C# or Java. Extremely liberating, right? I mean, you cannot express in words. Now, so if I have to do this here, what I will do is I will simply take a comparer function. That's it. No interface, no concrete classes, no instances, nothing. Just give me a function. And let us just assume that when I call you, right? When I call you with product 1 and product 2, you will pass me one of two values. What is the assumption here? The assumption is you will return 1 if the left hand side is greater than right hand side. You will return -1 if the left hand side is less than right hand side. You will return 0 if the left hand side is equal to right hand side. That's it. As long as we agree upon this particular aspect, we are good to go, right? So here, comparer function, just take this. If it is greater than 0, just go ahead and swap it because the left hand side is greater than right hand side. That's it. So this is what all it takes to create a plain simple sort function. So let's go here and let us create a comparer for let's say units, right? So function units comparer or product comparer by units. I'm making it more verbose here, right? So if p1 dot units is less than p2 dot units, return -1. If p1 dot units is greater than p2 dot units, you can optimize this code a little bit. As I said, I am doing it for readability, right? Otherwise return 0. There is no other choice you have. Now take the products and sort it by product comparer by units. Simply say console.table products. You'll find that it is sorted by units, right? So no, I don't need an interface, I don't need a class, I don't need an object. All I need to do is pass a plain simple function. All I need to do is pass a plain simple function. Are you with me? Do you understand? Is that clear? Righto. Now let us do this. How quickly can you create this? Huh? Right. Create this array and passing functions, right? The thumb rule, I mean the theme here is passing functions, right? Now what I want you to do is implement these functions quickly. What are the functions? Function that will let me filter the products based on a criteria, right? Costly products, cheap products. Functions that will let me filter the products based on the criteria. What criteria? The user will decide what criteria it is. Are you with me? Delegation. Do you understand, guys? Do you understand the problem? Anyone who doesn't understand? I can explain it. Right? So write up, see these, remember, all these implementations are already available in the language. You don't need to write these functions. You don't need to write these functions. These functions are already available as a part of the language. By writing these functions, we solidify our understanding of passing functions around in terms of arguments and as well as taking as return value. Is that clear? Right? I'll later tell you what implementations are already there. Write a simple function that will allow the user to filter the products or any list based on a particular criteria. What criteria? The criteria will be decided by the user. And then what else can we do? Min. Min of what? User will decide. Right? Min of what? The user will decide. Max. Max of what? The user will decide. Sum. Right? Are there any objects that satisfy the criteria? At least one object. Is there any product that is within my stock limit, the expected limit? Are there all products that satisfy the criteria? Are you with me? Right? And most interesting is group by. The user should be able to group the products. The user should be able to group the products based on what? Based on user's choice. Whatever the user wants to group it, he should be able to group it. Are you with me? Guys? Are we all good? Right, probably you can take a break. 10 minutes? No, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. I have very less time. We are yet to get into a lot more complex topic, right? So a 10 minutes break, short 10 minutes, I'll continue in 10 minutes. In my watch it is 3:25, I'll continue in 3:35. So I'll give you a glimpse of one, and probably you can take it forward from there. And I'll also give you a source where all these things are implemented. Okay, that's an excellent source. I'll come back to that. So filter. So if I have to write a very specific implementation of filter, it will be like this. So take the list, right? Assuming that I am writing this code for one particular criteria. Assuming that we are doing it for one. Right? So assuming that we are doing this for one particular criteria, it will be like this, where result is equal to an empty array for where I equal to 0, I less than list dot length, I plus plus. Iteration is completely against functional. Right? Iteration is completely against functional. What we are doing is completely against functional premises. I'll come back to that later. Right? Now, if list of I dot cost is greater than 50, I'm just making it more specific. I'll say result dot push the list of I, result dot push list of I, and finally return the result. So now if you take this, right, if you take this, now let's say where costly products is equal to filter of products, console.table of costly products, you'll find that it has filtered out only those products that are costly, right? Which one? The cost is greater than 50. Now if I have to make it generalized, if I have to make this function generalized, what will change? None of it will change. The where result is equal to array will not change. 37, line number 37 will not change. Line number 39 will not change. Line number 40 will not change. Nothing will change. What will change? Only line number 38 will change. So all we need to do is externalize that particular logic. Anytime you want to externalize it, right? Well, as I said earlier, keep what is common and move out what is varying. And when you want to externalize it in object-oriented languages, you will go for abstract classes, interfaces, concrete classes, objects, all those things. Here, you don't need to do that. You can simply externalize it by passing a function, right? So I can pass a criteria function and then invoke the criteria function by passing the list of I. Invoke the criteria function by passing the list of I, and as long as it returns me true, which means the item is satisfying my expectation, right? As long as it returns me true, I am just going to add it to the list and paste it, right? So once again, now you can define what criteria you want to look for, right? For example, where cheap criteria or affordable product criteria, right? Affordable product criteria equal to a plain simple function that takes a product and tells me if the cost is less than 50. Are you with me? Right? Function takes p, return p dot cost is greater than 50. Okay, I don't need this. Right? Now simply say where affordable products is equal to filter the products by affordable product criteria. Now do a console.table of affordable products. You'll find that those products, only those products that are less than 50. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Right? So we externalized the criteria logic into a separate function and we are able to pass it. Are you with me? Now, how about costly products? How about costly products? So what I can do, let's look at this. I'm sorry, not this, sorry. Let's take this guy. And I'll say costly products is greater than 50. Yes or no? Right? Ayyo, sorry. This is affordable products and this will be costly products. So costly product criteria. Costly product criteria. So I'll say product greater than or equal to, right? Now, is there a way I can generalize this? I wrote two functions, isn't it? One is an affordable product criteria, the other one is costly product criteria. Yes? Now, if you think about it, right? The products that are not affordable are costly. Agree with me? Right? Do I have to write a separate function for that? Is there a way by which I can generalize this? Negate, right? So basically what I want to do is, one form of function is anything that satisfies this criteria, the same criteria. The other form is everything that does not satisfy this, right? So now how can I generalize that? Create a negate function, right? So what you can do is, you can simply say function negate, right? What this will do? This will take the original function that you want to negate, right? This will take the original function that you want to negate and then return a function that will return invoke fn. How about the arguments? How about the arguments? So what I want to do is, what are arguments that are being passed as arguments to this function, right? All those arguments passed as arguments to this function, I need to pass, invoke it using this. So what I will do, I will say fn dot apply whatever is in this context. I will take this context, arguments dot slice of 0. Make sense? Right? So now what is costly product? Where costly product criteria is nothing but negate of affordable product criteria. Are you with me? Now if you look at where costly products is equal to filter of products by the costly product criteria, undefined is not a function. Arguments dot array dot, sorry, falling the same trap again. So this will be array dot prototype dot slice dot call of arguments comma 0, right? So negate of this and then do costly products. Now console dot table of costly products, you will find that I'm sorry. Oh, yep, thank you. So I did not negate it, height of ignorance. So let me create a costly product. Let me create this and then do a console.table of the costly products. You'll find that. So now we have created a general purpose negate function that will take any criteria but return the opposite of the outcome. Return the opposite of the outcome. Now if you look at it, right, if you look at the negate function, you find that we are employing both the aspects that we discussed a while ago. What is it? Taking a function as an argument and returning a function as a return value. Taking a function as an argument and returning the function as a return value. Are you waiting for me to stop or something? Come in, no issues. Makes sense, right? Are you with me? Right? Okay. Now, let's look at this context. We have time, right? So this is another application where I have used this, but JavaScript, today's JavaScript, EasyMScript 5 already has a solution for this. But in those days, right, before EasyMScript 5, you did not have a solution for this. Freezing this context. Freezing this context. What is this in JavaScript? Invocation context. Right? That this object in JavaScript is called as invocation context. So the context with which the function is being invoked. Right? Now here comes the next question. What are all the ways by which you can invoke a function in JavaScript? You can invoke it as a regular function. You can invoke it as a method of an object. You can invoke it as using the call method of the function, and you can invoke it using the apply method. What makes the difference between all these 4 types? This context, right? In all these 4 different ways, what changes is what determines the this inside the function, right? What determines the this inside the function. So let me create a crude outline of this. Now, if you take a function, right, as a function, invocation as a function, if you invoke it as a function, right, what is this? What will be this? Global object, right? And in the browser, the global object is window. Are you with me? Right? In the browser, the global object is window. Number 1. As a method of an object, if you invoke it as a method of an object, what will be this context? Object, right? So this will be equivalent to the object O. Okay, very good. If you invoke using the call method, right, and using the apply method, when you invoke it using call method or apply method, then what will be this? Arguments of 0. Whatever you want to you are passing as the argument, first argument, that will become the this context. Yes or no? And this is extremely dynamic. You agree with me? This is extremely dynamic. You will come across a lot of scenarios wherein you want to freeze this context of a function. You don't want the user of the function to say what should be this context. You want to freeze this context of the function to a particular object, right? How do you do that? How is bind implemented? Let me ask you this question. So I know, right? You can bind, right? So let me quickly do this. I see a lot of puzzled faces. Let me quickly do this. Where emp equal to an object that says name is Magesh. Sorry. Right? Let me create a function. Who am I? Console.log. I am, comma, this dot name. Right? Now what I can do? I can say, who am I? Dot call pass emp. It will say I am Magesh. So I am able to change what is referred to as this when I am using it with call. You agree with me? Now, the problem with this is when you say where department equal to an object and name finance department. You want to increase the font size? Better? Okay. Right? Now what you can do? I can say who am I dot call department. Now this will say I am finance department. Now if you look at it, the way the function has been written, it's this context can be changed dynamically to any object, right? I don't want that to happen. I want to freeze this context of the function to one object and only that object. You invoke the function using a regular function, using a method of an object, using call, using apply. I don't care how you invoke it. I want it to be to that object, right? Now, as I said earlier, in JavaScript 5, you have a way by which you can do it. Like what? Like so, where who am I is equal to who am I dot bind of emp. Are you with me? Once I do this, anytime I invoke who am I, right? Now you say who am I dot call passing department. It will say I don't care how you invoke it. I will always point to this object. Are you with me? Is that clear? Now you guys are lucky because you can use this now. Before JavaScript 5, ES5, bind function was not there. So what is the solution? How can you write a function that will freeze this context of a function to a particular object? Can you think of it? Exactly, right? So the same thing like what we did with negate, right? It is the same thing. Function, okay, let me recreate the who am I once again. Right? So now function bind this. This will take a function and then the target object. And you will return a function which will return the invocation of apply, right? Which object? Exactly. Target object, comma. What are all the arguments? Arguments dot, I'm sorry, array dot, prototype dot, slice dot, call, arguments, comma, 0, arguments, comma, 0. Make sense? I think we are good. And that's it. Now, when you say, who am I equal to, bind this of who am I, comma, which object? EMP object. Now when you invoke who am I with simply who am I, it says it is Magesh. If you invoke it with call, passing the department object, it will still say it is. Are you with me? Now if you see here, closure also plays a role there. Where is Fn coming from? Where is this Fn coming from? This Fn is created as a closure here. You are extending the lifetime of the inner function beyond the scope of the outer function. How? You are referring to this argument here. So you are employing everything here. You are employing passing functions as arguments. You are employing returning functions as a return value, and you are also employing creating closures. You are also employing creating closures. Are you with me? Do you understand, guys? Right? Just a few lines of code can achieve what you are looking for. Now, I forgot to tell you one thing. We wrote the filter function, right? We wrote the filter function, right? Is it possible for me to write this function without this intermediate result? Is it possible to write this function without the intermediate result? Huh? Recursion is one way, one solution, fantastic. Anything else? Answer is in tomorrow's session. Not my session, Hemant's session, Gen X. Right? Generators and iterators. You will find an answer there. Lazy evaluation. So the result will not be accumulated. The result will be generated as and when you iterate through them. Right? So watch for that. It will be very interesting. Right? Okay. This is bind. What other function that I can talk about? Okay. How about writing one function, right, that can be invoked only, okay, we discussed about this, right, caching. Okay, so now let's stop at this. But is this clear? Right? So simple functions, very, very simple functions, where by externalizing the varying logic, by employing, taking functions as arguments and returning functions as return values, right, pretty much you are able to do this. Okay, fine. But in true functional terms, right, you are not supposed to maintain this result. What result? By any intermediate result that you track. You are not supposed to maintain any intermediate result. No variables, no state change, immutable. How do you do that? You do that with the help of recursion, right? Now, these four are the pillars of what you can achieve in JavaScript with the help of functions. Number one, higher order functions, which is passing functions as arguments, returning functions as return value. Third one is scope maintenance using closures, and the fourth one is using recursions, right? Now, where exactly recursion plays a role? Let us take this. If I have to, let's do this. Let us write a simple sum function, and the user can pass a list of numbers here. The user can pass a list of numbers. Typically, how do you go about summing them up? Where result equal to 0, for where I equal to 0, I less than result dot length I plus plus, and result plus equal to, sorry, list, thank you. So what is list? List will be passed as an argument R, yes. I can use arguments dot length, thank you. Right? Arguments of I, assuming that it returns me a number, and then finally return the result. Okay. Now, when I take this and invoke this, I get the result. Is it possible for me to achieve this without this? Is it possible for me to achieve this without this? Of course you can. How? Function sum return arguments dot length is less than or equal to 1. If that is the case, return arguments of 0. Otherwise, sum dot apply of this comma, call some function, this comma, take the array dot, once again as the prototype dot call of what call? Slice dot call of arguments comma 1. That's it. That is it. So what you are doing is, if I have to put it in pictorially, I'll say sum of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is equivalent to 1 plus sum of 2, 3, 4, 5, which is equivalent to 2 plus sum of 3, 4, 5, which is equivalent to 3 plus sum of 4, 5. By now you know what I am talking about. 4 plus sum of 5, which will return just. Are you with me? So when the function calls traverse back, you will find that the return value of the last function will be added to the previous one, which is 4, which will be added to the previous one, which will be added to 2, which will be added to 1. Now, it is not that you are not using any temporary variable. You are using the stack as your temporary variable. Are you with me? Right? You are using the stack as your temporary variable. Why should I take this approach? Any reasons?
Immutability of the variable.
Why should I worry about immutability? Why should I worry about immutability? The chances of errors will be very, very less. Right? The most important thing is the chances of errors will be very, very less. In other languages, immutability is attributed to, rightly what he said, when the object is being accessed by multiple threads. Right? Immutability saves you a lot of trouble. But in JavaScript, if you look at both the environments where JavaScript is employed, it is single-threaded. On the server side, Node is single-threaded, so you don't have the risk of the object being manipulated by multiple threads. On the client side, yes, you have multi-threading infrastructure available, but that doesn't let you expose the objects to the outside world. That's everything in web workers. Everything that you define inside a web worker is private. Nothing is exposed. Unless you return it back, nothing is exposed, right, from the web worker. So even though you have the concept of multi-threading, not exactly that multi-threading technical threads, right? You have the concept of multi-threading available in HTML5 as web workers. You don't stand the risk of the object being manipulated by multiple threads. Mostly, right, in JavaScript, this form is attributed towards the chances of bugs can come down greatly, right? The chances of bugs can come down greatly. Are you with me? Do you understand? Right? Now, this is the challenge. We did quite a lot of functions, right? We did filter, sum, min, max. Yes or no? Try to write them in this form. You understand? Right? Yes, sir. Yes, there is a. That risk is always there. I'm sorry. What?
Directly supported by JavaScript right now, right?
Recursion.
So
We are using recursion.
no. What he's saying is. So what he's saying is basically. So you're basically stacking up all the calls, right?
Correct.
So there's a fixed size of stack that we can have, and then because of that we can have a Stack Overflow.
That is correct.
So when tail recursion comes in, so the compiler internally will change it to a iterative call.
I have no idea. I have no idea. The reason why I am not able to give a yes or answer no to any of how it is internally being done is the chances of that being carried out in different forms is very high. Think about it. In Java, you have only one JVM, right? So I can very well say this is how it is being internally handled. In C# or in .NET, you have only one VM, .NET runtime. I can very well say this is the only way by which it can be handled. But in JavaScript, you have too many runtimes, right? Chrome uses one, the V8 is one, Mozilla uses another, IE uses another. So each runtime may follow different strategy of how they want to optimize things, how they want to handle things efficiently. So I can't say how it is being done internally. Maybe, may not be. Sure.
In this approach, right, you said that you will be using this to minimize the errors, and in multi-threaded applications things can happen, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said that in this you are using this approach because you want to run this with multiple threads, and there will be private.
That's the idea behind the functional concept.
But my point is that this would also cause more activation records to get created. Recursion is a costly process, right? Iteration is much faster than recursion. So why would you even go for this?
As I said, these are the choices. These are the ways by which you can solve a problem. One way of doing it is in a typical procedural imperative way. The other way is more declarative.
Okay.
Right? So these are the choices you have. One reason why functional languages take more precedence or take more, they gain more importance is they can scale well. Because you don't depend on any global scope. You try to write pure functions. Functions that does not depend on any global scope, functions that does not create any temporary variable, right? You try to write pure functions. When you try to write pure functions, scaling becomes very, very easy. So if I have a huge set, I can split the execution, multiplied by how many cores I want, and distribute it across without worrying about the common state that they get to share, right? So scalability becomes much easier, though it is not really making sense in the case of JavaScript. That's what I said, right? So there are certain things that really does not add any value in the case of JavaScript, but those things can be done in JavaScript. And most importantly, your code, right? When you see, ultimately, if you think about it, right? When you follow functional way of doing things, you will hardly have any for loops in your code. Right? When you do things in a functional way, you will find yourself getting rid of more and more iteration logic, right? And you might have noticed this difference in jQuery. Have you noticed that? After adopting jQuery, one thing that you would have noticed is the number of loops that you write in your client code drastically comes down, right? Because it is a set language. So you are able to manipulate a collection in a declarative way, not as an imperative way, right? So you don't iterate through the nodes. You simply say, create one object that represents the node and say hide it, show it, fade it. Whatever you want to do, you just do it, right? Same thing is possible in the case of this technique. In fact, to a very greater extent, jQuery simplicity is achieved by following these techniques. You don't need to write any of these functions. If none of these functions need to be written today. All these functionalities are already available either as built-in API, right, in the core language itself. For example, if I take a simple array, right, where numbers is equal to an array of 10, 11, 12, 13 and 14, okay. If I just take this array, now do a dir of numbers, you will find that if you further scan through the proto, you see here the array has filter method, the array has for each method, the array has map, the array has reduce. So all those aggregation logic that we did, right, sum, min, max, those things can be very easily achieved using this. You don't need to write those functions at all. But to use these functions, you need to know what's happening behind the scene. For example, if I want to use the filter, what does filter expect? Filter actually expects a predicate. What is predicate? A predicate is a fancy name for a function that returns a Boolean value. Right? A predicate is a fancy name for a function that returns a Boolean value. So if I have to use this, unless I know exactly what's happening behind the scene, it will be a little difficult for me. For example, look at this. Numbers dot filter. Take a function and tell me if it is an even number. As long as it is an even number, give me that. Right? Now, internally what's happening? It is iterating through it. It is taking one number at a time, passing it to your function, and your function says, yes, take this number. No, ignore this number. And based on your function's return value, it is accumulating the result and giving it to you. Are you with me? Right? So, now, how about max? How about max? I want to find the maximum value. Very simple. You can take, for example, you can say numbers dot reduce. Take a function and let us just look at what is the, I think it is the seed and the actual number. Now here I can say return, check if the seed is greater than the number, then if the seed is greater than the number, then return seed value, otherwise return the actual number. Now what do you want to act as a seed value? I want to act as 0 as the seed value. Now you will get, what is 14? Max number. So I am able to reduce it to one value. How about min? Exactly that, I mean, ditto the same thing, except that, oh, because the seed value is 0. That gives me a min. Are you with me? If you don't pass any seed value, right? So the way you can understand what's happening behind the scene is, you can say, just print the arguments. Just keep printing the arguments and don't pass any value. Now you see, it says 10, 11, 1, array of 5. undefined 12,2, undefined 13,3, undefined 14,4, which means your function is invoked the first time with 2 arguments, 10 and 11. Is that clear? And after that, it passes one number at a time and the index. It passes one number at a time and the index. So here it is, index is 1, 2, 3, 4, and you also get the actual value. Now how can I find the min? Pretty simple. You simply say n1 comma n2, and actually, you know what, that will work. Seed comma n. Now simply call this, you'll get 10. So don't pass any seed value, you are going to get the actual minimum, right? Do you understand, guys? Right? Now I want to transform this array. I want to create, you know, this array to another array that says odd, even, odd, even, odd, even, depending on whether the number is an odd number or a even number. So how can I do that? Pretty simple. All I need to do is run a map on that. So I'll say numbers dot map, take a function, takes a number, and just return write the logic for one number. Now n mod 2 is equal to 0, then return even, otherwise return odd. That's it. Transformation is damn easy. It says even, odd, even, odd, even, depending on the numbers that you have passed, right? So if you use these built-in functions, most of the iteration logic that you write otherwise can be very easily avoided. Are you with me? Do you understand? Any questions? Are we good? Right. Where can I find more information on this? One of the best libraries where you can use it to learn JavaScript is _JS. All these things, the bind implementation, bind all, quite a lot of functions that are implemented. Whatever we have seen, you will find the implementations there in that particular library, _JS. _JS is an excellent library for mastering JavaScript. If you are still not comfortable with the language, _JS is a fantastic library. Now, in what sense? You should not learn how to use underscore. You should learn how to create underscore. So take one, it is basically a collection of small functions. So take one function at a time, understand the usage, and you try to provide your own implementation. If this is the input, this is the output, what should be the function implementation? You think from the author's point of view and write that particular function. You can learn quite a lot of interesting stuff, right? You also have the complete solution available. Don't look at the solution. You try to write your own implementation, compare it against the solution. You can learn how to solve it, and as well as what is the best way to solve it, right? Open for questions. Yes, sir. Lodash is primarily caching, right? I'm sorry? Superset of underscore. Okay. With a better performance.
Question is, let's say
Sorry, 1 second, sir. Did I answer? I didn't answer. So it's a superset of underscore with better performance. I have not used it. I'm sorry.
So, especially when you are trying to do programming, when you are trying to refresh again and again, there is a Stack Overflow possibility of Stack Overflow happens. So until the return comes in the ES6, what is there a solution that you can propose to?
At this point of time, there is nothing. That is why you will find even in _JS, the implementation, the core implementation, the raw reduction function is still based on for.
Okay.
It is still, it does not do recursion. It still depends on iteration. But after that, right, all other functions will use that low-level reduce function. Correct.
Follow-up question. So, what is the level of support for ES6 in V8 and other things? Just
at this point of time, it is possible. There are transpilers available.
Okay.
Right? I just came across one. Traceur. So it's basically a compiler that compiles your ES6 code to be compatible with ES5. So you can use your ES6 constructs today.
May not be with the same performance.
May not, of course, definitely. May not be in the same performance. So whatever your runtime or whatever your engine is expected to do, you do it programmatically. So definitely the performance will not be good. Cyclic references. I don't get it. You are talking about the risks of cyclic references?
Yeah, some common ways of creating cyclic references accidentally with closures.
Correct.
So can you just explain a little bit about that? Because I've read a few articles about it, but never really got the hang of it.
At this point of time, I'm not prepared. I'm sorry.
Okay.
There are Learn You a Haskell is an excellent book, or if you have the appetite, probably you can look at what is it? There is this Bible. No. I tell you, this huge book. SICP, Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs. That is, all the chapters are primarily focused on this. I started 5 years ago and I made to complete the book. That's why I said, if you have the appetite, you can. But it's a nice book. It's a very, very nice book. Right? Last question. Good. So either the session was too good or it was too bad. Right. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for bearing with me. And I am reachable on these mail IDs.